Okay, today we're going to talk about two kitnios topics and then one we'll say Chametz topic or mechiras Chametz topic. Okay, the first is we talk about alfalfa. So alfalfa is something that's been grown, so to speak, forever. It's called a forage crop. It's fed to animals. And because basically it can grow no matter what, and it grows these really dark green leaves really quickly. You could harvest it basically once a month, to the point that Schwartz even thought that it's when you read gamur, you call it aspasta, but it could be that that's in fact the same thing. There's scientific reason to think that the Arabic word for alfalfa is al-fasfasa. So maybe it's not aspasta, maybe it's asfasfa. Anyhow, whatever it is. So people can't eat it. Okay, it's made of cellulose, and you could eat it, but you can't digest it. So people don't eat it. But there are people who want to get the alfalfa has a lot of boron, and they want to get those benefits by eating alfalfa. Again, the alfalfa you can't eat itself; humans can't eat it, so they eat alfalfa sprouts. These little sprouts, like beginnings of a plant growing with a little seed on the top of it, and it goes about an inch or two long, and they don't have much cellulose, so people can digest them. And it doesn't look anything like the finished plant, which is this dark green leafy plant. And at the end of this sprout is it's like a little seed, it looks like, and the seed usually is split in half. So Schwartz said, but this thing and the next one, both kitnios things, they have to do with Schwartz actually. Schwartz said like this. He said, look, Lamais it's considered part of the pea family. And the seeds on top of it, those seem to be like seeds also. So he thought that it should be included as part of kitnios for Pesach, and people should not eat the, so to speak, seed part. Okay, because if the truth is, if you pull that seed off, it looks exactly like every other bean or seed or thing like that also. And he thought it'd be us because of that. Now, Rav Short says, listen, I know. Ramosha says we don't aser foods that were not eaten. When the minhag started, we don't add new foods onto it, and he accepts that. And he says we have no reason to think people ate it because nowadays you can't eat alfalfa for sure, and we have no reason to think people did either. He says Lamaisa, but it was around. It wasn't a new crop. It's been around for thousands of years. People have been using it for their animals, and so basically it's been around the whole time. When the minhag started, it was around. The people might not have been eating the leaf itself, but maybe we're eating the seeds, who knows? And the seeds look exactly like every other seed or bean, and therefore he said it should be included in the minhag. Now, that said, he said, Lamaisa this is a sefer Yad Yitzchak, a Hungarian Pesach from the late 1800s, the early 1900s, and he said the minhag of kitnios only applies to the bean or the seed part of a food, not to the stalk or the other plant materials. So, in theory, if we would then take the bean off and eat just the stalk, just the sprout per se, just the plant part of it, it would be permitted because that part, the plant part, is not kitnios. But he said, but in practice, of course, that's impossible. You're not gonna sit and pull the beans off of every single sprout before you eat them, and therefore, in practice, we tell people that they can't eat alfalfa sprouts. But in theory, the sprout per se is okay, and it's just the bean which is not okay. And it comes up in other situations, like I'll just give another example that came up recently, which was, what about broccoli sprouts? Okay, so the sprout per se, there's nothing wrong with sprouts. Excuse me, and as far as we know, the broccoli sprouts don't have beans in the end of them or anything like that. Broccoli anyhow is not kitnios, so those would be perfectly fine to eat that. Okay, now, related to that is that, I shouldn't say related to that plant, and nothing to do with Pesach, is that the leaves of alfalfa, and I said humans can't eat them, but they have this really dark color, and of course, the dark green color in plants, the green color in plant comes from something called chlorophyll, and some people want to use chlorophyll as an ingredient for the color shaboy, and some people feel it has health benefits also. Whether that's true, I have no idea, but for sure it's used, and especially it's become more popular in recent years as people have tried to get more natural colors. So this is a great way to get a natural green color, and using alfalfa to create chlorophyll as a color is considered accepted by the FDA, and it could also, the chlorophyll that comes out of there could be reacted with some other chemicals to make something called sodium copper chlorophyllin. Okay, all the things that are used to make that from alfalfa into this sodium, copper, chlorophyllin are not kosher sensitive, and therefore it doesn't need hashgacha. Now, there is another way to make sodium, copper, chlorophyllin, not from alfalfa, but rather from an excretion of silkworms. Now, of course, silkworms are not kosher, and an excretion of something that comes out of a non-kosher animal is also not kosher. So the question is, so does that mean sodium, copper, chlorophyllin should need hashgacha to make sure that it came from alfalfa rather than coming from silkworms? So we don't consider that to be an issue, and the reason is because, first of all, is the chlorophyll that's recovered from the silk is not. It comes from silkworm droppings, means their excrement, and because of that. That when we say that an excretion of an animal, of a non-kosher animal, is not kosher, that means is the excretions that are edible, like milk or eggs or things like that, or other things that would be like that. But when it comes in that's inedible, we use that as we call it pirsha, and we say that thing is not usher, even if it came from a chafe animal. Second is, at least in the United States, it's not considered legal by the FDA for a person to make sodium, copper, chlorophyllin from silkworm droppings. It's not clear to me whether it's legal in China, and even whether it's not legal. Maybe people do it anyhow, but at least in the United States, it's not considered legal to use that, to make it from that. Anyhow, so because of those reasons, we consider it to be okay, acceptable to use it without hashgacha. Again, that wasn't a Pesach question; it was just relevant to alfalfa, so I mentioned it. Okay, our next kitnios issue is fenugreek. Again, it's a plant material. It doesn't have year-round Kashrus concerns. And for whatever reason, it seems that it's used in making maple flavors. Okay, for whatever reason, it had some connection, and it's used in maple flavors. So, is it kitnios or is it not kitnios? So the term kitnios is, we use it relates to Pesach, and because Achronim speak about such a minhag to not eat kitnios, but that term, that word, actually has a very specific halachic definition in Hilchos Klayim. Okay, it refers to a very specific thing, and it refers to things where someone eats. It's a kind of food where the part that you eat is just the seed. Think about a bean or a sesame seed, eating just the seed portion of the plant, as opposed to, there are other terms when you eat the flesh of the plant, like a, I don't know, like an apple. No, an apple's not because like a carrot, or you eat the flesh and the seed, like a tomato or a cucumber. So kitnios has a very specific halachic definition as it relates to Hilchos Chaim, and we assume that Achronim who spoke about this minhag, when they talked about and they used the word kitnios, that's what they're referring to. I mean, what else? To them, that's exactly what the word means. To us, we think of the word kitnios as in the things I'm not allowed to eat on Pesach, but for them, it meant this halachic definition from Hilchos Chaim. And if we think about that, then we would say that fenugreek would be usher, and that's because the part of the fenugreek plant that we eat is the seed. That's exactly the part that is usually eaten, or at least one of the parts that's eaten. So the fenugreek seed, what we call fenugreek, which is the fenugreek seed, would then, according to this, would potentially mean it should be kitnios. In fact, there is a prominent posek who says, yes, in fact, kitnios is fenugreek is kitnios. And he says, look at this, a Rashi, the Rashi's in Beitza, who says that tilson, which is the Gemara word for fenugreek, is a type of kitnios. Now, of course, Rashi wasn't talking about Pesach. Rashi is talking about the minhag to not eat kitnios started hundreds of years after Rashi died. So Rashi wasn't talking about Pesach. He was just talking about whatever he was talking about over there. But he says, just like Rashi says, he says, you see, he says fenugreek qualifies as kitnios, like Klaim kind of dinim. So too, we should do for us also. That would be a reason to think that maybe it is kitnios. But in truth, it's not exactly like that. And that's because the Rama says that when he says that the minhag to not eat kitnios, he says, anise and coriander are not considered kitnios. Now, why not? They're the same. They're basically the same as fenugreek, give or take. Similar, they come from a seed. So why shouldn't they be considered kitnios? So if you look at the document there, he says, you want to know why? Go look in Siman Reish Daled, and it's Orchaim. Look in Siman Reish Daled. Now, Siman Reish Daled, that's the Siman where it talks about the brachas you make before you eat a food. So what does it do with Hilchos Pesach? But if you poke around there, you find out like this. Over there it says, he says, go look at the Torah in Reish Daled. If you look there, the Torah says that if you eat a food that grows in the ground, the bracha is hadama. But he says, but if you have a spice that it grows in the ground, but it's never, nobody eats it by itself. Basically, no one eats it by itself. What you do with it, you put it in some other food. You mix it with another food. So then if you eat it straight, you make shahakal, because that's not at all the normal way to eat it. Excuse me, therefore the bracha is downgraded to shahakal. So Dr. Moshe in Hilchos Pesach is saying like this. He says, just like if you eat a spice by itself, it has a different bracha. It doesn't have the same status as something else that grows in the ground. So too, it doesn't have the same status as related to this minig for Pesach to not eat certain foods, and it would not be usher on Pesach. And what would be the logic? The logic is going to be like this. One of the reasons why kitnios is usher, or the minig to make kitnios usher, is because you might confuse it with chametz. Well, spices are very different than chametz because you don't eat the spices by themselves. It's very different than, let's say, corn flour, which you eat as corn flour or you eat as corn itself. So it's very different from that, and therefore you wouldn't confuse it, and therefore it wouldn't be included in the minig. So that is to say is what the Ramah is really, when he tells you look in Reish Dalet, he's telling you is that anise and coriander, the reason why they're not forbidden on Pesach is because technically by Hilchos Chaim standards they would be kitnios, but they're not because spices are not kitnios. Things that are just eaten as a spice that are added into some other food is not included kitnios. Kitnios is only things that you eat as is. You eat the food. You would potentially eat that food by itself. So now it may be that kitnios that Fenugreek. There's potential rise that Fenugreek was used as a spice even in times of the Gemara. Not so relevant to us, but Lamais is Fenugreek as basically by and large is used as a spice, and therefore Schwartz said for that also that it is not included in the minig to 90 kitnios. Just with like anise and coriander, the later poskim say that you need to check them carefully to make sure there's no chametz grains mixed into, like wheat or barley mixed into them, because it's common with these bunch of spices. But assuming we cleared that point of it and we made sure that there wasn't anything mixed into it, then it would not be considered kitnios, and it could be used in maple syrup or I guess anything else that you wanted to make out of it. Okay, so those were our two kitnios topics, and now let's move to something else, sort of chametz, sort of mechiras chametz, and that is like this. There's a minig some people have that they do not sell chametz gamur. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain what that minig is and what it does or doesn't include. Okay, so you're not allowed to own chametz in Pesach, and there's two ways to basically avoid that isser. One is to get rid of the chametz. You have to find it first. That's called bedikas chametz. You find the chametz, you destroy it all. The other is to mevatel it. It's a type of hefker. And midrabanan, you could do either of those. Midrabanan, you have to do both of them. Okay, so the classic way you're supposed to get rid of it, to deal with your chametz is you get rid of it and you mevatel it. Okay, and we can only imagine that there were always yidden who had chametz that they didn't want to destroy. I don't know. They had something in their house that they didn't want to get rid of. So what do? So they could either they would sell it to somebody else. They find another yid who'll eat it before Pesach. Let's say I have a bagel and I don't want to throw it out, but my next door neighbor will give me $1 and he'll eat the bagel. No problem. So I can sell it to him and he could use it, or I could sell to someone who's not Jewish and he could keep it. He might not even eat before Pesach. Not my problem. As once I get out of my rishus, I'm done. I don't have to worry about that. I have this on Pesach. Okay. But now, what happens if a person has chametz, he doesn't want to destroy it, and he also doesn't have any realistic way to sell it? Who's going to buy, let's say today, I had a bagel. Who in the world is going to buy a bagel from me and take it from me and do something? It's like that's not such a realistic possibility. So the mechaber says, based on the Tosefta, that what you could do is you can sell or give the chametz to someone who's not Jewish and buy back from him after Pesach. Okay, and he says you can even speak out that you'll be willing to buy it back after Pesach. So what I'm doing is erev Pesach, I'm standing there and I'm making a complete sale, or a wholeheartedly giving it to him as a present to someone who's not Jewish. But we have a deal that I'm selling now; it's completely yours. But after Pesach, I'm going to buy it back from you. Okay, so then I don't own it for Pesach. The guy, I didn't have to find the guy who's so to speak ready to buy it. He's buying it, but he's not putting any money out. I mean, the kinyan might involve some down payments, and in theory he has to pay me for it. But in practice, he knows that in a week from now, give or take, he'll be able to sell back for me, and everybody will be happy, and there won't be any problems. Okay, so this is an eight the mechaber brings down, and what's happened is over the over many hundreds of years, this thing which we call mechiras chametz became very commonplace. Lots of people are doing it. It moved away from being such a once in a while kind of thing to be pretty commonplace. But it's also had changes in two specific ways. First is there are a lot of people who are not just in a situation like, oh, shucks, I have 3 bagels left in my freezer. What am I going to do with them? I do mechiras chametz to them. But rather, they have loads of chametz. They keep lots and lots of chametz. And they say, what about Pesach? No problem. I'm just going to sell it. Okay, so one thing is that they have lots of chametz around. It's not little bits. Like they have one thing that I could go to the neighbor and sell it to him, and with the deal that I'm going to buy it back. And the second is that there are a lot of technical halachic requirements to selling something to someone who's not Jewish. The technicalities of the kinyanim of how it has to be done, and affording a chrayas, all kinds of things that have the technicalities. And what happened is, Poskim brought up points that people were making mistakes with these kind of things. So we've transitioned to the point that almost everybody who does this mechiras chametz does it through the local rav. They don't do it themselves. They don't go to their neighbor and say to him, "Hi, you want to buy my bottle of whatever or my bagel?" I don't know. I keep saying bagels. Why do you want to buy them for me? Rather, they go to the Rav in town and they say to the Rav, "You arrange for the sale for me. You know how to do it right, and that way I'll be comfortable that happens." Okay, so our two changes here are, first of all, that it's lots of chametz, more than just the one or two things. It's lots of chametz, and the sale is not being done privately between a Jewish and non-Jewish person, but rather communally between all the Jews in town, so to speak, and this one person who's not Jewish. And because of that, because of these two changes, it's not possible for the non-Jewish person to take physical possession of all this chametz. Okay, it's not possible. First of all, I had too much stuff for him to take. It wasn't one or two things; it's lots of stuff. And also, the Rav is selling to this one person who's not Jewish for 50 people or 500 people in town. So all of a sudden, this is way too much for him to take into his possession. Okay, so that because those changes, we have this other sort of side effect, which is that we can't get the chametz out of the Jews' property. Now, seemingly, that's a problem. If I can't get the chametz out of the Jews' property, there's a problem, because when the mechiras says you could do this idea of selling your chametz and you'll buy back afterwards, he says you have to machor or nasan le'en Yehudi shemi chutz l'bayis. You have to sell it to someone out of your house. Sorry about that. I'm sorry. You can't. It has to be sold to someone who's. It has to be someone who's out of the house. I mean, get the chametz out of your house. So the Mishnah Berurah brings two different explanations for what that means, or why the mechiras says this, that it has to be sold to the guy who's out of the house. One is like this. There's a machlokes in about exactly what kind of kinyan has to be done when you sell the chametz to someone who's not Jewish. To sell metaltalin from a yid to a guy, there's questions about which kinyanim work. And by taking it out of the Jew's property, it's a way to make sure you did the kinyan meshicha. Okay, which is for whatever technicality, that's a good idea. So the point is, it has nothing to do with Pesach per se that you want to get the chametz out of your house. It's just a way of making sure the kinyan is done properly. Okay, and so sort of to deal with that part of the issue, when they make mechiras chametz nowadays, when the Rav makes mechiras chametz to someone who's not Jewish, he does all kinds of kinyanim. Okay, 5 kinyanim, all kinds of kinyanim are done in order to make sure that the kinyan is done correctly. So this issue wouldn't be a thing. The Mishnah brings a second reason, and that is that the when you sell the chametz to the guy in Erev Pesach, and you know you're going to buy it back after Pesach, everybody knows that's what's going to happen. And if the chametz were to stay in my property, then on the one hand, people will think I might be over on Bayirah. I'm violating this Isser to keep, to keep chametz to keep your chametz over Pesach, because look, it's still sitting in my house. And second is, the person might end up eating from it. Okay, the person might end up eating from it because it's his chametz all along. It's going to be his again in a week, so it doesn't take it so seriously. This idea that he can't eat from it. So Mishnah Berurah says, this idea that he might eat it, it's not good enough to just put the chametz into a special place. Okay, you can't just put it into one corner and say, okay, it's all in this one closet and that's good enough. He says, listen, but if you're stuck and you're nothing else you can do, you can't get the chametz out of your property. Like the Shulchan Aruch says, you have to get out of your property. So now it's a chametz issue. You want to make sure people don't think you're over on Bayirah, or you want to make sure you don't eat it. The Shulchan Aruch said to do that, you have to get it out of your property. So he says is what you should. If you that's what you really should do. And the Mishnah says you really should do that. But if you're stuck, then what you do is you sell the place where the chametz is to the guy, and so then and sort of technically you've got it out of the Jew's property. It's not in my property because that closet belongs to the guy. It's not my closet anymore. It's really his closet. Okay, so I've sort of gotten around this requirement by including the land that's underneath it as part of the sale also. So El Yerabba comes to pretty similar conclusions to that, but he's stronger than the way the Mishnah says. He's stronger. He says there's only 2 times when someone can sell his chametz to a guy without transferring it out of his property. Okay, one is if a person's in the whiskey business. Literally, that's what he says. If you're in the whiskey business, and it's not possible to transfer dozens of barrels of whiskey to the guy's property. It's not possible. So he says, okay, so over there, then what you could do is you sell the chametz together with the whole warehouse, and that will be a sort of what's called fulfillment of what the mechaber said, that you have to get it out of your property. And the other is, he says, is if what you have is not chametz gamur, then you could be samech on this thing and just you could sell it to him, including the land on it, without moving the food out of your property. Okay, so he says two kinds of people should be samech on this. Either if you have ridiculous amounts, like you have a whole warehouse full of chametz, of whiskey, or you're selling things that are not chametz gamur. Now, I just before we continue, I just mentioned both Mishnah Berurah and the Rabbi say that if the person did the chametz without transferring it, it's just b'diavad, it's fine. The set mechiras is fine. But both of them, the Mishnah Berurah is saying you should go like the Shulchan Aruch says and not really do it unless you're stuck, and El Yerabba is saying only just sell the land that's underneath it, and that without getting it out of your property. If you have this whiskey, you have whiskey like you have these huge amounts, or if you have if you have things that are not chametz gamur. So here we're seeing from El Yerabba that a makar, a source to this idea that people should only rely on the kind of mechiras we do nowadays. Not what the Shulchan Aruch says, the kind of what we do nowadays, where it all sits in my house and the Rav makes arrangements for the mechira, is either from someone who's in that kind of a whiskey business, or if he has foods that are not chametz gamur. And because of that, that's the makar to such a mitig that people have, that they don't use mechiras chametz for chametz gamur. Okay, and within that group, some people are particularly lenient for if they have whiskey. Now, really, the El Yerabba didn't say to be makel about whiskey. He said be makel if you have a whiskey business. Okay, a whiskey business is not the same as a bottle of whiskey, but it's sort of an extension of that. That some people say, okay, I'll be makel to do what we call mechiras chametz. In the way it's done nowadays, if I have whiskey also, or if I don't have chametz gamur. Okay, so what they'll do is, of these families will do is, they'll say, if I have any chametz gamur, I'm going to destroy that chametz, get rid of all that chametz gamur. The only things that I'll leave around, that I'll include in the mechira, are going to be the things that are not chametz gamur or that are whiskey. Now, what did El Yerabba mean when he said chametz gamur? What did he mean when he used that term? Okay, so maybe to the average Joe today, they have different ideas of what it means. But there's actually, the Gemara tells us what the word chametz gamur means. Okay, the Gemara uses it in 2 different ways. One is the Gemara says that chametz gamur is lafuke chametz nuksha. Chametz nuksha means is a grain that didn't ferment completely, or it's somewhat inedible. That's not so common for us, not so relevant to us. But it's also, the Gemara also says it's in contrast to a taruvas chametz, something that has less than 50% chametz in the mixture. Okay, so you are over on Bal Yirah for owning a taruvas chametz, even if if it's less than half chametz. Then it's also, you are over on Bal Yirah, but the isser, if you would eat that taruvas chametz, is less chomer if you eat taruvas chametz than if you eat pure chametz. Okay, that's Gemara Pesach, and then the Mishnah speaks about it as well. Is a little less serious. So seemingly, the El Yerabba is saying is, if you could rely on a mechiras chametz without getting it out of your property for a taruvas chametz, which is this chametz, which the issa to eat it would be a little less. So I guess since the chashash is that, or one of the chashash the Mishnah Berurah says is that chashash is if you keep it in your house, you might end up eating it. The issa, the punishment for eating is a little less severe, so we don't have to be machmir for that case. So some people who don't want to sell mechiras, who don't want to sell chametz gamur, apply exactly the way I just said it, which is they won't sell beer, pasta, bread, pastries. All those things are more than 50% chametz, so they won't sell those things. Okay, well, let's see if I have anything else here on my list. They won't sell oat milk or pizza or pretzels or sourdough starters or malt vinegar or brewer's yeast. They won't sell any of those things or anything that has flour. Okay, I'll take that back in a second. I'm looking at a list here of Cheerios and cookies and farfel and couscous and cakes and bulgur and bread. All these kind of things. There's probably more here on my list that I'm not reading to. That are more than 50% chametz. Okay, and they will sell chametz. They will sell things that are only have some chametz in them. Like for example, cornflakes. It's made with malt in it. Malt is chametz, but it's not. It's less than 50%, of course, and therefore the corn part of it is kitnios that you're allowed to keep that on Pesach, and the malt is less than 50%. So they say I won't sell bread, but I will sell Cheerios. I won't sell Cheerios, but I will sell cornflakes because the cornflakes has less than 50% chametz in them. Okay, and within this, some people say the whiskeys are included, or some people don't include whiskeys. Okay, different ways of dealing with whiskey, whether they allow it or they don't allow it. Even though whiskey is more than 50% chametz, most whiskeys. I'm not going to the detail, but most of them are more than 50% chametz. But even so, they won't include either. Now, some people say this minig to not sell chametz gamur, they sort of stretch it and they say, no, I won't sell anything that has in it chametz gamur. So in other words, I won't even sell cornflakes that have in it malt in them. Now that's not what the Elya Rabbah said. Really, what they're saying is, I'm not going to sell chametz. Anything that has any chametz in it, I'm not going to sell. So why are they making a mechira? I guess they're making a mechira in case it's on tiny bits, or that's bottled, or that they didn't realize it was chametz. I'm not exactly sure why they make a mechira. What's the point? And they don't. It's really not. They're really what they're excluding is not chametz gamur. They're really excluding anything with chametz at all. But yeah, there's such a thing. So that's the background and the different versions of how this minute goes. To sort of make some sense of this, we have a list. I made a list of 50, 70, I don't know, maybe it's 100 items. I don't know how many it is of different foods that people ask about that they think if I don't sell chametz gamur, would I include this food in my mechira? Would I not include it? So it has a couple of categories. The big chunk of things are things that have no chametz concerns at all. Okay, a lot of them like popcorn and potato chips and quinoa and regular vinegar, in contrast to malt vinegar. I'm sorry, take that back. Wine vinegar and canned corn and raw barley, baking powder, regular flour. I'm sorry, I take that back. Not regular flour, rye flour. So a lot of these things here, there's maybe 20 things here that have no chashas of chametz at all. And those people, you for sure could, so to speak, include your mechira. For that matter, you could just keep it without selling it either. Then I mentioned beforehand a whole group of things that are for sure are chametz gamur, that if you don't want to sell chametz gamur, should be included also. Okay. Then there's some other categories. One is, I got about a dozen foods here that you have to check the ingredients, or you have to find out about the ingredients because they may have some chametz into them. Most of these would have some, like for example, ice cream. Okay, ice cream could have cookies in it, or could have flour in it. Gefilte fish could have in it bread, matz meal inside of it, which would be chametz, or a soup, or soy sauce, or different kinds of snacks, or almond milk and baby food. All these things you have to check the ingredients. And if you don't know what they are, ask someone who does, because they might have in it it might have chametz in it either. Usually, in all these cases, it would be some, like seasoned French fries. Seasoned French fries often have flour in them to help hold the seasoning on them. Okay, so those are all things we have to check in, and then afterwards you'd be able to categorize it as being pure chametz or having some chametz in it. In the chametz gamur, or having some chametz in it. Then there's a whole group of items that are only that have ingredients in them that theoretically could be chametz, but in the United States are assumed to not have chametz, like a lot of things that have in them alcohol or vinegar. We have pickles and salad dressing and toothpaste, and that's a little bit different thing. And deodorants, a lot of those kind of things where if you have or plain yeast in your house or plain vinegar, white distilled vinegar, all those things in the United States are assumed to not be chametz. Let's say vinegar. If it was made from chametz, it would be pure chametz. But in practice, it's not made. It's in the United States, we assume that it's not made from chametz. So this is our group. And this is a rabbinic question. Should I include those? If I don't sell chametz gamur, should I sell them or should I not sell them? And then, of course, there's the whiskeys. Then there's a couple of things where it's a suffix, and it really depends on how it's made. Like matzah that's not made for Pesach, or flour, or oat flour, or rice milk. These are all things that are, depending on how they were processed, they might or might not be chametz. Again, a person would have to ask a question, ask their Rav, how should I do this? If I had this minig kanatza chametz gamur, would I include it, would I not include it? And I sort of went through this list in a not very clear way. At some point, it'll probably be on our website. Anyhow, for now, that's the background of this minig that some people have, and where it comes from, and why some foods might or might not be included in the minig.